good afternoon to everybody, and that I would really like to be there in person with you all. It seems that you have a very exciting conference, but at least I am able to reach out this way, and hopefully you'll be able to follow what I will present here, and hopefully there will be some time for questions as well. So, as my title says, I am talking about the reintroduction of hemp into Finland and also elsewhere. And I am using our extensive archive of newspaper clippings and magazine articles and other media coverage that took place starting in 1995, when Jace and I, together with the cultural secretary of this municipality where we were living during the 90s, called Hankasalmi, we had a hemp project there. It was a 2-year hemp project, 1995 to 1996. So a lot of these newspaper articles that I'll be talking about, they are from the year 1995. But then after those articles, we move on to more recent ones, and the very latest sample that I will show is from 2019. So if I may have the next slide. So, in other words, I am tracing the media coverage, and I'm showing examples of how this hemp project of ours was represented in the media. I have had to use selection because this archive is really quite vast. So I have selected scans of articles that really tell the story and the evolution of this coverage, because there clearly is development that's going on. So I begin with established French fiber varieties that we used in this hemp project, and so the first articles focus mostly on this project of Hankasalmi, but at the same time we also had in our garden, in our backyard, hemp growing that eventually became the Finola oilseed variety. And then just a brief mention about why Finland. Finland has never passed a law where hemp cultivation would be illegal, and we had no kind of permitting system either. So that's how we were able to grow hemp when hemp was not grown in Finland at all. And as you listen through this presentation, I hope you can reflect at the same time on the situation in Ireland. So maybe in the questions session there is a little time to also hear feedback from you guys if there's something that came up during this presentation that rings a bell under the conditions that you are. Next slide, please. Something if it has not existed before. So this picture that I have here is from the Museum of Central Finland. There has been a cultivation of hemp for fiber purposes for centuries. The earliest evidence of this is from the 9th century, but it probably existed even before that. So hemp was grown for fiber. It was mainly used for wood, clothes, and rope. And the cultivation of hemp ceased around 1950s, and it was mainly due to the spread of synthetic materials. Next slide, please. So this Hankasalmi that I mentioned, it's in the central part of the lower part of Finland. There's this red smiley thing right on the very text of Finland, as you can see. And you can also see how much further up north Finland is compared to Ireland. Next one, please. So when we got into this Hankasalmi Hemp project, we decided to be very transparent about it and inform the local media and the regional media. So this is a newspaper article from the local newspaper called Hankasalmen Sanomat. So we had this field, it was called a cultural field, and it was in the very center of the Hankasalmi station village. Hankasalmi is a municipality of a few thousand people. It has a couple of little villages, and the station village has the train station, as the name already implies. So we had the local gardeners from the municipality plant the seed, and we had media coverage not just from the local reporter but also from the regional newspaper, which you will see that in the next slide. Well, sorry, okay, there's one more before that. We get to the next one also. This shows that we used established fiber varieties, plants, Futura and Fedora, in this cultural field, which was in the center of the station village in Hankasalmi. Next one. So here is the regional newspaper, and the article in that newspaper. So this appeared about the same time as the local newspaper article in June, on the 15th of June. And the title of this article says, "A bold experimentation with hemp at Hankasalmi." And then the lead states, "The fiber grows over 2 meters tall, unusual experimentation for Finland." So this first article in the regional newspaper, Keski-Suomalainen, was really quite favorable, but it changed quite quickly. Next slide, please. So just a couple of days after this first article in the regional newspaper, we had another one with the bold headline saying that the authorities got interested in the hemp field. And this text tells how the police, the Central Finland police, got interested in our project. Next slide. And so very early on, it's clear to see when you look at this news coverage that the local newspapers is taking our side and kind of defending us. So the title of this newspaper article that appeared in June, just a few days later after that Central Finland article, this one states, "Unnecessary stir about the hemp project, and the seed came from a reliable source." Next one, please. And at this moment, the national newspaper, Helsingin Sanomat, got interested in what we were doing. So in July, they came and visited us and took pictures of the hemp field. And as you can see in the picture, there are little hemp plants already growing there. And they interviewed us, and their headline says, "Hankasalmi hemp produced strong paper." So the main headline is still kind of reflecting what we are talking about, and at this point we are really focusing on the fiber, which seems to be the case with all the people that start with hemp during modern times, that they focus on the fiber aspect. But the lead text there brings in the police already. So the police will mark the hemp's drug content. So although we were using these French varieties, which are very low in THC, as you most probably know already, nevertheless, by bringing this issue up in the newspaper, it becomes sort of a bigger thing than what really was in the end. Next one, please. So here, this is a very interesting picture because in this Hankasami State Village, as I mentioned, this cultural field is really right in the middle of the village. There was some construction going on there, so that's how the sign for Hankasami got pushed into the hemp field, which really creates an impression that here is the whole municipality is lying in the hemp field, totally harnessed here. And the main title says, "The hemp field of Hankasami, a headache for the police." So now we have done the police as really being the main thing in the main title. So it kind of climbed up there from the lead. And the lead is kind of enforcing the same thing. Principles need to be discussed on a high level, and then the text itself focuses also on this necessity that the authorities feel at this point that this thing that we are doing in Hankasami, it's sort of an outrage, and the authorities really need to take a stand here. Next slide, please. So again, we are back to the regional newspaper, Keski-Suomalainen, and by now, in August, we are living well, this text is from the 18th of August. We have had to cut down the field, so if I may just read the text, you'll understand. The sensational field of Hankasami was cut down on Thursday afternoon. The decision for cutting was reached mutually during the negotiations between the cultivators and the police. However, the situation is not yet clear for the authorities. In this Hankasami case, the police were afraid of possible side effects and unauthorized visits to the hemp field, says the crime commissioner Pauli Huuskonen. The Central Police discusses the principles concerning comparable future cases today at Vantaa. Representation from the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry is also present. So, as you can see from this article, the emphasis is very much on the legality or the possible illegality of what we were doing, and that's why the hemp field was cut down, although it was cut down between after the negotiations between us, the cultivators, and then the police. And then the end of the text brings out the necessity of these discussions that will take place in the capital area, and where we, Jason and I, and then our cultural secretary, will not take part. Next one, please. And in this regional newspaper, still in August, there's still this emphasis of the police needing guidelines for hemp cultivation, and about the Hankasami case, how it has speeded up the discussion on the national level. At least in this text, we have the Hankasami sign standing up again, and in the background you can see the muddy field where there is no hemp growing anymore. Next one, please. So this is another regional newspaper. This is from more eastern part of Finland, Savon Sanomat. This is actually the area where we are living nowadays. And here we get to bring our voice more to the discussion, and it is the main headline is clearly from what we have told to the reporter. the hemp field was turned into a drug field. So as the police was monitoring the THC levels of the fiber hemp that was growing in the station village, they were able to show that there was increase of the THC values, although they were still very low. Nevertheless, they were able to make it seem like this cultivation is turning into a drug field. And that's why we had unwanted visitors. There were some youngsters that came to get some plants when they were still growing there. So that is the side effects, the unpleasant side effects that the police was referring to also, and which were reported in these newspaper articles. Jace happened to see one car of youngsters come and drive the field and jump out of the car and pull out some plants and then drive away quickly. Next one, please. So this is the first article, still from 1995. The first article in the main farmers newspaper, Maaseudun Tulevaisuus, which is actually a very prominent newspaper, not just for the farmers, but for general public as well. So let's read the text here. Hemp cultivation at Hankasalmi set a precedence. The hemp cultivation at Hankasalmi became a short-lived experimentation. The well-growing field was cut down based on a mutual decision between the police and the cultivators. According to the police, the cultivation was destroyed mainly out of fear of side effects because of the drug content of the plants. The samples taken by the police showed that there was very little intoxicating substance in the hemp. Some EU countries pay subsidies for particular hemp varieties. In some other EU countries, growing hemp is forbidden or requires a license. So Maaseudun Tulevaisuus is mainly echoing what was already in the Central Finland newspaper, but it is bringing into the discussion the fact that there was only very little THC in the hemp, and some EU countries actually pay subsidies for particular hemp varieties. Actually, they do, of course, pay subsidies for these French varieties that we're growing. And then also that in some EU countries, growing hemp is totally forbidden, or at least a license is required. So it is taking the discussion a little further, although it is still echoing a lot of the reporting in the Central Finland. Next one, please. So this is again the local newspaper. So you can see a little bit how they are defending us and taking our sides with the title saying, "Publicity failed the hemp field. The police were afraid of side effects." This text does cover quite nicely our side of the thing, and it also talks about the different varieties that exist in Europe, and again bring out the police side of things, that they were afraid of the side effects. Next one, please. So again, the local newspaper, they had a little cartoon made of Jace. So that there is Jace standing in the hemp field, now that there is no more hemp growing, stating, "That's it, a reward for developing the Finnish countryside." And the sign has cultural field crossed over. "This project is now over. Greetings from the police." So there's a little bit of humor there. And then on the left-hand side, you can see a text from Jace himself, where he's addressing the good people of Hankasalmi, thanking for the support that he got. And although this field in the station village was cut down too early, nevertheless, Jace is stating at the end of his little letter that the smell of hemp as it was being cut down smelled good to him, and it smelled of the future. And thank you all. And indeed, yes, there is future after all these dramatic things that we had to go through. Next slide, please. So the local newspaper says reports a very important thing. So part of our hemp project, or one important part of our hemp project, was the seminar that we're planning from the very beginning. And this seminar took place in September. The Central Police was trying to talk us out of this seminar, but we persisted, and we did have an invitation seminar. So all the people invited to the seminar, both the speakers and the audience was about 40 people altogether. So they were all invited. And we had many talks, and we also had international representation, not just Jay's, but also a good friend of ours, Dave Pate, from the States, was also bringing in the international aspect of what's going on in the hemp world. And we also had the police give their own representation. We had a paper being represented, and Jace was already talking about the nutritional aspect of the hemp seed. Next one, please. So this is another farmers magazine, El, also a very prominent and long-standing magazine. They ran 3 pages based on this seminar, and the headline was, "Wow, what a plant, a new useful plant." And they talk quite extensively of different aspects of the seminar and hemp in general. They bring out also the police and the idea of zero tolerance towards the THC, and that growing hemp for drug purposes is a crime. And that prompts a question from the audience, which is reported in this text. Now, how is it now? Is hemp cultivation allowed or not? So there was a little bit of indecision that became out because of these statements from the police, and this was aired out during the seminar. So there was a lot of other coverage also in the national newspaper and also regional newspapers, but I will not go to those ones so that we can move on. Next one, please. So this is the regional newspaper, and stating clear and shared guidelines needed for useful hemp cultivation. And now this is the first time we get this expression, hyötyviljely, which in English I will have to say is translated as useful hemp. And this is very good to see that it comes out in these newspapers at this time. So, but there is still a little bit of spitefulness coming through from this regional newspaper from central Finland. This lead, the Hankasami seminar was a song of praise for him. Next one, please. We put out proceedings from the seminar at the end of the year of 1995. Hemp as a cultural plant, Hankasami Hemp Seminar, and these proceedings has all the presentations that were given in the seminar. Next one, please. The local newspaper reported of us getting an award at the local community Independence Day ceremony. This is from December 1995. So Jason and I are standing there on the right-hand side amongst these other people of Hankasami that were awarded that year for supporting the local community. Next one, please. And also the regional newspaper kind of included us as the persons of the year, the sort of doers and shakers of the year. And they have these pictures also of our field. On the left-hand side, you can see the hemp still growing, and on the right-hand side, you can see how the field has been mowed already. And the captions are saying the Hankasami idea, Hemp grew in the summer at Hankasalmi, and then the hemp field after negotiation with the authorities. So there's a little bit of spite still lingering on, although they at the same time do promote us a little bit as people who really were trying to do something in the year of 1995. Next one, please. So also, there were some seminars, and there have been several seminars that have been organized in Finland around hemp, and we usually get invited. We participate whenever we can. If we can, we try to find somebody else to do it, or at least send a PowerPoint, a PDF of PowerPoint for some. These are now next some samples of the variety of media that approached us. Often they ask for an interview, some people came to visit us, and we got coverage in a whole variety of things. This one is from a gardening magazine, and by then they are again using this hyötyhampu, which really means it's like usefulness hemp. So it's a whole concept that now begins to have some coverage. And so useful hemp for the garden, why not? So sudden drug hemp does not grow well outside in Finland, so this is stated first. Useful fiber and seed hemp, however, do here extremely well. Their limit of latitude is about the same as that of rye. So this was very promotional, and it's interesting that they make a comparison to rye. Rye bread happens to be the national food of Finland. So, it's like it really brings the topic home when there's a comparison made to rye. Next one, please. And we also went to France. We went there on several occasions. There's a Festival du Chanvre, meaning a festival of hemp. It's a festival that lasts almost a week, and they grow fiber hemp there, and they process it in the old-fashioned way. In other words, they cut the hemp, tie it up, and they have it soaking in the River Loire. So we participated in the scientific days of this festival and gave lectures of our experiences. And this article mentions, among other things, Jace Calloway and his wife, so I'm just a wife, no name mentioned, and then also Chambre de l'Aube, which is a hemp company in France, and Bernard Boy of that company. Frank Machy, editor of Echo du Chambre, which is a publication that specializes in hemp. Next one, please. And then a pharmaceutical publication, Galenos, asked for an interview, and so they also started representing hemp. Hemp oil protects humans within inside and wood on the outside. Essential fatty acids from seed oil. So now you can start seeing in the titles already in 1994 more specifically focused on the fatty acids and the nutritional aspects of hemp, away from the police and their fear of side effects and demanding guidelines for growing. So now we're clearly moving on in the industry. Next one, please. And the national newspaper also got another article. Now we're already in the next millennium, and again now the emphasis is on the usefulness of hemp and hemp seed oil in particular. Functional foods from hemp oil and protein. Protein is also brought to the headlines. A new domestic oil plant. And it's called a variety also, treatment for rash and a competitor for soy. So now this is reflecting the University of Kuopio studies on hemp seed oil, and that's what the reference to rash is coming from, meaning atopy or atopic dermatitis. Next one, please. Also, we got some coverage in a culinary magazine.
Kehittävä elintarvike. They covered a seminar in Suonenjoki. I think it was a two-day seminar, and it was really done in the kitchen. So we made all kinds of hemp foods there. We were invited to participate, and so that was very interesting. Would be very nice if there was a little more follow-up on these kinds of things. Next one, please. And then a publication for psoriasis patients, Ion Aika. Also, well, the publication is particularly for psoriasis patients. So, so by then we had this study from the University of Kuopio. Jace was involved with that, and the results were very positive. So I was asked to write a more popular article on this. The results had already been published in scientific journals, so this was a little more reader-friendly version of the same news from the university. So new study result from the University of Kuopio: hemp seed oil alleviated the symptoms of atopic dermatitis, and atopic dermatitis, of course, is also known as an eczema. So that was very, very important to get this article out. Next one, please. And then also there's a whole variety of coverage. This one is from a magazine that focuses on science and technology and covered different uses of hemp. Next one, please. And this one in the American Oil Chemistry Society. This is an article that Jace wrote after the editor requested this article from Jace. Hemp seed oil in a nutshell. Next one, please. And then this one and another article that I'll show in just a minute are very, very important. They're sort of milestone events for us. Jace mentioned in his presentation earlier that we lost the EU subsidy, and that was of course a very, very bad thing for the image of Finola and hemp in general. We lost this because of the THC measurements had been taken too late. So after about 7 years of fighting, we finally got it back, but only for Finland first. So that's what this production can continue refers to. Of course, the production of Finola had never stopped. There was all the time some growing of Finola in Finland and in some other countries, but it was on a small level, but it never completely stopped. So domestic oilseed hemp gets the EU subsidy again this year, but as I said, this was only for Finland for 2 years. Next one, please. And then this one is again in the main farmers newspaper, Maaseudun Tulevaisuus, and it reflects another seminar, but also agricultural research stations getting very interested in Finola and studying it. So this one saying oilseed hemp is suitable for organic cultivation. So now we talk also about the organic aspect of side of things. Oilseed hemp is a valuable and nutritious plant, and it competes efficiently against weeds. Finola hemp is grown in Finland. A plant for good soil requires long growing season. Hemp is a protein plant, and it was also good that this protein aspect was brought up in this article. Next one. And here is the article mentioning the fact that now Finola is back on the EU subsidy list on all of EU, not just in Finland. And this of course came late in the season, so it didn't really have an effect anymore that year, but the following year which is different. So plant cultivation, domestic Finola oilseed hemp being turned into an export item. So now again we are moving on into this more like seeing the promises and the possibilities of hemp. Now we start talking about an export item. Next one, please. And this is the last and the most recent major article. This was 4 pages long in that main farmers newspaper, Maaseudun Tulevaisuus. And it states, it has been a long road to fame for the oilseed hemp that turned into superfood. The plant almost disappeared. Canola oil seed hemp went from Finland to conquer the world. Its story combines courage and perseverance. And this was a very prominent article, very happy about it. We had a long interview first on the phone, and then the reporter came with a photographer to visit us. And the reference to conquering the world by last year, we had already sold canola also to Australia and New Zealand and Uruguay, and we had, of course, done very well in Canada, as Chase mentioned earlier, and also we're doing really quite well in Europe in general. Next one, please. So this is my conclusion here. So we can say that media coverage of hemp has been a double-edged sword. Although these more recent ones are very positive, it was clear to see, especially the Central Finland regional newspaper was really not treating us fairly, and the way that the Central Finland Police Department, how they were able to influence the way these things were reported in the media was very clear to see. Media discourse evolves over time and shows plenty of variety in target audience. I didn't even mention some magazines. For example, we had quite recently an article in a magazine that specializes for cyclists. Not bikers, but cyclists, and also another one in farm machinery. So, but I also would like to say that media coverage is not enough. I particularly regret the fact that we don't seem to be included in representations of healthy foods and oils in media that is aimed at general public. Consistently, there are those articles in everyday magazines and newspapers where they talk about healthy oils, but hemp seed oil is still missing in those kinds of articles. And now I'd like you to reflect if there are similar issues going on in Ireland. And as we are reflecting on those issues, and if you have some questions, maybe we can have a couple of questions. Maybe we can look at the last slide, please. So do you have any?
Thanks very much, Anita. We'll take anybody who have a question at the moment.
The research paper about the hemp seed oil and the eczema, was that just taking that orally, or did they have like a kind of recommended daily amount of how they were taking it?
Orally. They were taking it orally, but they didn't know what oil they were taking. It was a so-called double-blind study where they compared hemp seed oil with olive oil, and there was a 4-week period when they consumed one oil, then there was a washout period, and then they switched to all the other oils. So they didn't know when they took olive oil, and then they didn't know when they took hemp seed oil. Chase will tell a little more about this study in his presentation.
And the dose was 2 tablespoons a day, which is a lot, but I think 1 tablespoon a day will be enough for this kind of problem, the atopic dermatitis or eczema, as it's called. So 1 tablespoon a day of hemp seed oil, that should clear it up. And you'll see the results in 2 weeks. You don't have to wait a very long time. It becomes very apparent that it's helpful.
Okay, thanks very much, Anita. I have one question that I wanted to ask. Your history, when you do your review, suggests that maybe there was a very fractious or confrontational relationship. Was that particularly about the oil or hemp in general? Because in Ireland, and I'm only looking at this for the last 2 years, we don't see, I could be wrong with this, but we don't seem to see this being an issue from a growing perspective. I'm not talking about processing now, I'm just talking about actual cultivation. Or has that changed in Finland now as well?
Well, I would certainly say that it was about hemp in general. So we started in 1995, and that was really when growing hemp and dealing with hemp was even more difficult than what it is nowadays. And clearly the image was, it's like right away associated with drugs. At least nowadays, there are a lot of people who have heard about growing hemp already, who have heard about hemp foods. There are a lot of farmers that have tried it, and there are also quite a few producers in Finland that are putting out hemp products, like hemp seed oil, hulled hemp seed, snack bars, and things like that. So it's not the same anymore. Clearly, there's been a lot of development in this field.
Okay, thank you. And can we give we have one more question.
Okay.